interesting developments in terms of migration coming through the Darien Gap. Let's talk about it on the Hot Zone. Hey folks, Chuck Holton here. Thanks for watching the Hot Zone. I had been really busy last week because we were down in the Darien Gap, myself and my fellow journalist Michael Yon, down there doing some research on the state of the migration coming through Panama through the Darien Gap. One of the things that we were doing while we were down there was extracting two other journalists, friends of ours, Ben Berquam and Oscar Blue, who work for Real Americas. They just finished a very grueling trek walking through the Darien Gap along with the migrants coming from Colombia all the way through, spent 3.5 days in the Gap. Then they took the shorter route. And let me explain to you how that works. There's actually two different routes that migrants can take, and it depends on how much money they have, what way they go. If you have a little bit more money, you can spend more time in a boat and get a little bit closer and not have to spend so much time walking in the jungle. And that is the 3.5-day journey that comes out at a place called Canan Membrillo, from which they can take a boat down to a place called Puerto Limon. That's where we went to pick them up. The poorer migrants start out in Capargana and for several more days, so more like 6 days in the jungle, and can make it out either Canan Membrillo or make it out at Bajo Chiquito, which is where most of them are coming out now. Those are Indian villages inside the Darien Gap, still pretty deep in the jungle, but from there they can pick up a dugout canoe, pay a little bit of money, and get paddled out to the road where they get put on buses and shipped directly to the Costa Rican border. So one of the things that we've seen is that last year, the amount of people coming through the Darien Gap was up almost 100%, a little over 70% from the year before, to nearly 250,000 people. That's an absolute record. The year before was a record, but last year, 2022, was a huge record for the number of people coming through. Now, most of the people coming through last year were from Haiti, Cuba, and Venezuela. However, because of the new policy where the Biden administration is pre-clearing people, it's like TSA pre-check for those three countries, and accepting 30,000 people from each of those countries, the numbers of those people has gone down, but it's still pretty substantial. Now, what we saw when we were there was that there are now large numbers of Chinese coming through. Chinese people coming through all the way from China. From what they told us, it took them about 2 weeks to get from China all the way through the Darien Gap to Panama. And that means they usually fly to Brazil or Ecuador, probably Ecuador, and take buses up into Colombia, buses across Colombia, and start walking. They take a boat around actually into Panama, and then they get checked out at either Puerto Baldia or one of those little villages on the Panamanian side, and then they start their walk. Now, if they're already in Panama, I don't understand. If they have money, why don't they just take a plane from Puerto Baldia or take a boat all the way up to the San Blas Islands where they can get a taxi from Porvenir over to Panama City? I don't know why they don't do that. But instead, they're walking and coming through the Darien Gap on the easy route, and it's still not very easy. Easy to get lost, easy to get killed, easy to get sick, and definitely the currency of the Darien Gap is misery. And how you pay that misery, how you pay that currency could depend on just your physical state and your financial state before you go in. Long and the short of it is, there are still about 30,000 a month coming through the Darien Gap, either through Bajo Chiquito, where the majority of them come, or through Puerto Limon, where we were. And again, what we saw were Chinese and Somalis, and we saw a guy from Mauritania in West Africa. We saw people from Afghanistan, things like that. Some very exotic flavors of migrants coming through there. The people coming through Bajo Chiquito are still going to be a lot of Venezuelans, Haitians, and Cubans. And those people will, see, here's the thing. You can pre-qualify to get into the United States by filling out a form on an app that the U.S. put out and getting your certification beforehand. You pre-approved, and then you just get on a plane and fly into the U.S. directly. Present yourself at a port of entry or something like that. But If you are from one of those three countries and you try to come in illegally and get caught, then you're going to be kicked out, according to the Biden administration, and you will not be able to qualify for that program. And they say that's going to reduce the numbers of people coming from those countries because they don't want to get blacklisted. But what they could do is just simply throw away their passports, which many people do on the U.S. southern border, and come across illegally. Because if they don't appear in any database, then they could say they're from one of the countries, any country except the 4 countries that are on the pre-cleared list. And so let's say you're from Cuba, you could say you're from Guatemala. Let's say you're from Haiti, you could say you're from Brazil. You could say you're from the Dominican Republic. You could say you're from any country that's not on that list. And they don't have any way of checking, so you're going to get allowed right into the United States once again. It was really fascinating to pick up Ben Berquam and Oscar Blue as they exited the Darien Gap, to hear their stories of what it was like to walk through the gap. And I had thought, maybe I'd like to do that someday. After talking to them, I think I don't need to. I've done plenty of walking in the jungle in my day, and it hasn't gotten any easier than it was back then. So I think I'll probably just take their word for it. And I would encourage you to go sign up and subscribe on their channels on YouTube and elsewhere, because they've got some pretty amazing stuff, some of which you've seen here on this podcast today. So that's all I've got for today. Thanks for watching Hot Zone. You can follow me and subscribe and support us at locals.com. ChuckHolton.locals.com is where you want to go. Make sure you like and subscribe here wherever you're watching this podcast, because that really helps us. I sure appreciate it. And we're going to be going to Peru here in a week or so, so stay tuned. We'll see you.